Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, April 15th. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. Today is a big day. We have a lot to get into around the NFL draft that is now less than 10 days away, 9 days to be specific. We'll get into the Saints quarterback situation with Derek Carr now potentially out for the rest of the season with a shoulder issue. We'll talk about what the Saints might do there, as well as updates for the quarterback class this year. Travis Hunter said he won't play football if teams don't let him play both ways. A potential trade out of Miami with Jalen Ramsey and maybe Tyreek Hill next. And then a little bit of a look at what's going on with the NHL playoff races, as the season has just 1 or 2 games left to be played for each and every single team. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, April 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit here what's going on with the Saints quarterback situation. The Saints, of course, came into this offseason expecting to have 2 more years of Derek Carr. He signed a 4-year deal 2 years ago. He's got 2 years left on the contract. They were in not a great cap situation, so they went and restructured the deal. It's going to be a huge cap hit next season, so it's kind of hard to move off of him. Because of that, they were seemingly moving forward with Derek Carr as their quarterback. News came out last Friday that he was potentially going to have surgery on his shoulder, holding him out all season. Now, the Saints sit at a really interesting spot in this draft. They're in the top 10. They're picking 9th overall in this draft, so they have a lot of options. They can go out and get one of those quarterbacks in this draft. They can draft one of those guys at the top. Cam Ward, I think, is probably going to be off the board at number 1 overall to the Titans. I feel like that's about a done deal. But outside of that, no idea where these quarterbacks are going to go, right? You have 3 quarterbacks, potentially 4 if you're going to listen to all the reporting, that have had some first-round buzz. We're talking Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. These are the guys that have had any kind of first-round buzz. I'm going to lower that list down to just 3 guys. Shedeur, Jackson Dart, and Jalen Milroe are the 3 that I think have a real chance of really going in that first round. Maybe a couple of other guys will outside of Cam Ward, but we will have to see. So where are their options there? Shedeur Sanders seems like QB2 on most people's mocks. No reason not to have him there. He's a guy that has proven successful. He's got really good accuracy, and he should be there at 9. The one thing with the Saints is they were going into this season not really expecting to draft a quarterback. Right now behind him, they're dealing with Spencer Rattler, who stepped in and played a couple of okay games last season for them when Derek Carr went down. But outside of him, it's not really what you want, with new head coach Kellen Moore being probably at the start of a rebuild or a restructure at a minimum with the cap situation that they're in. So that takes away one of their options, which is sign Aaron Rodgers. Right? Aaron Rodgers is still out there. He hasn't committed to playing for the Steelers, which is basically a done deal at this point. But now the Saints are open, and maybe he wants to go play for the Saints. I doubt he wants to go down to the Bayou and play there, but that is still an option that is open for him if he does decide, hey, I don't want to go to the Steelers. That's not a move for me. This is a place he could start, which is huge, but I just don't think he's going to have the kind of money the Saints are to convince Aaron Rodgers to come play football with them, or the personnel kind of success expectation that the Saints are going to have. I think Aaron Rodgers wants to go out and win football games at the end of his career. So I don't really think that one is an option, although that is something to keep in the back of your mind. The other one you can take a look at is trading for a quarterback. There are plenty of quarterbacks out there that are rumored for trade. The big one that a lot of people are throwing out there is Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins, with the Atlanta Falcons, I expect him to be moved post-June 1. But again, with the cap situation that the Saints are in, it's just not going to be a good spot for them, right? Kirk Cousins has a massive contract, right? He has $100 million guaranteed. That cap hit is going to be huge. You don't want to be putting $120 million towards two different quarterbacks in 1 year, right? And that makes it really tough for Kirk Cousins to be that guy for the Saints. So that kind of puts us back where we started. At the draft. At pick number 9, there's a real chance that they're going to have their pick of QB2, who they want. With all the reports being that 1, 2, 3 in this draft basically locked up, being Cam Ward, Travis Hunter at 2 to the Browns, and then Abdul Carter at 3 to the Giants. That is basically how I expect the top 3 picks to go. I don't think that's going to change. Even if there is a trade, I expect those to be the top 3 picks. So then outside of that, who might take a quarterback, right? We look at the draft order. At 4, you have the Patriots. They're not going to take a quarterback. Again, potential for trade. The way that there hasn't been a trade yet, I don't expect there to be any trades, so I wouldn't count on it. At 5, you have the Jags. They've got Trevor Lawrence. They're not going to take a quarterback. Sitting there at 6, you've got the Raiders, who just traded for Geno Smith. They're not going to take a quarterback. 7, again, the same story. They moved off of Aaron Rodgers, signed Justin Fields. There's a chance that they draft a quarterback, but I don't really see that one happening, especially when this is a team that still has a couple of other needs and a new coach that just brought in a new quarterback. I don't think they end up drafting a quarterback at pick number 7. Pick 8 is the Panthers. They have Bryce Young, not going to draft a quarterback. So there you have it at 9. Shedeur Sanders most likely is going to be available. So is Jackson Dart. So is Jalen Milroe. You have to talk about where he might go because Shedeur Sanders is slipping right now on draft boards. Shedeur Sanders is a guy that came in, projected number 2 overall draft pick at the beginning of all of this. Mel Kiper has said he's the best quarterback in this class. I think he's crazy for that. I think it's clearly Cam Ward. But it's not just Shedeur Sanders is the guy, no reason to check anything else. There's a bunch of other questions. Some people really like Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. Jackson Dart has a big arm, but he does have a couple of accuracy issues. He hasn't been the best at decision-making, which is stuff kind of the opposite of Shedeur Sanders, right? Shedeur Sanders is really good with accuracy, really good with decision-making, but he just doesn't have super strong of an arm, and he's not a great athlete. Jackson Dart, basically the polar opposite of Shedeur Sanders. Same thing with Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe is a guy that I really like. His comp for me is Colin Kaepernick. I think a big physical runner, a guy that can throw the ball like nobody's business, struggles with accuracy a little bit, very toolsy, but if you can get him right, maybe the Saints can do it. He's a guy that could turn into a Josh Allen. That's the kind of comp that you're looking at for Jalen Milroe. He's going to be a beast. He's very similar again. These all kind of the same guys. Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is the middle option. Anthony Richardson is the floor option. And then you've got, of course, Josh Allen at the top of that. I think that's the kind of attributes we're putting towards Jalen Milroe. And Jalen Milroe is a kind of guy that maybe the Saints want to take a risk on. Maybe they decide they want him at 9. He's being invited to the draft. He's going to be there in Green Bay. But I think what the Saints are going to do most likely is draft a quarterback. You can't go into this season with a new head coach relying on a backup quarterback. This is supposed to be a new era of Saints football. What better way to start it than have a rookie come in and take the reins and start over with this Saints team that desperately needs to rebuild, regardless of how good or how bad this goes. I think they need to go out and get a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, most likely the guy, but dark horse candidates there. Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, they've got a real shot to get drafted at number 9. Potentially now we get to see more people go in the top 10. Quarterback's always the star of the show, but that is one pick to watch when we get closer and closer to draft time, because that is one that truly is up in the air. The Saints really could go in any direction. 9 days to the draft, that's a massive story. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you think the Saints grab? Do they grab a quarterback at all? Are they going to trade for Kirk Cousins, sign Aaron Rodgers? What do they do at quarterback now that Derek Carr is no longer going to be healthy? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, though. When we come back, we turn our attention over to another draft prospect. Travis Hunter came out today and he said that he would quit football if he wasn't allowed to be a two-way player in the NFL. A pretty strong mention to whoever drafts him. We'll see how that goes coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Saints quarterback situation. Not a great situation for them to be in. Kind of last-minute news that Derek Carr probably not going to be able to suit up this season. Puts them in not a great position. In this segment, though, we turn our attention over to Travis Hunter. Probable top 2 pick in this draft, definite top 4 pick in this draft, superstar, two-way player, says he will quit football if an NFL team decides that he's only going to play on one side of the ball. How real is this threat? How big of a deal is it for teams now, and is this going to affect his draft stock? We'll talk about that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, April 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get a little bit here into what's going on with Shedeur Sanders, with Travis Hunter and the NFL. Travis Hunter, of course, like I said he will quit football, which is quite a heavy-handed threat for a guy that's going to be worth such a strong piece of real estate, really, in the NFL. A top 3 pick in the NFL draft is diamonds compared to gold for everybody else. Travis Hunter is the best player in this draft. He's both wide receiver 1 and cornerback 1 in this draft. He is that special of a talent, but is it sustainable? That's been the big question surrounding Travis Hunter. The big question with him is not, is he a good football player? Because he won the Heisman, right? No one is disputing that he is an elite football prospect, one of the craziest prospects we have seen in a very, very long time. The ability to play at this level, even at the college level, Heisman level, with both wide receiver 1 and quarterback 1 capabilities, despite it not being the strongest wide receiver or cornerback draft overall, still, he is the best one, which is a feat that will probably never be repeated, at least for a very, very long time. This is a very strong message to spend. He has been very clear on his messaging all throughout his career. In high school, he decided to play at Jackson State because he was going to be allowed to play both ways. Then he followed Deion Sanders to Colorado because Deion Sanders allows him to play both ways. That is the reason he didn't go to a Florida State. He didn't go to one of these top Power 5, Power 4 conferences immediately. He had to prove himself, and he did. He proved himself by winning the Heisman yet again, and now his messaging is once again loud and clear. Do not draft me if you're not going to play me both ways. Is this going to scare off a couple teams? I hope it doesn't. Because if this scares off teams, he wasn't worth drafting at 2 anyway, right? He's not going number 1 overall. That's still going to Cam Ward. Where we can start to have this discussion is the Browns. Now, the Browns, they need a receiver. They could also use another corner. You could never have too much on both sides. The Giants, at 3, could use both, no doubt about it. The Patriots definitely could use both. We can go down the list. The Jaguars could definitely use both, right? All of these 2 to 5 teams, you can go 6, 7, 8, whatever. You can go all the way down the list, probably down to 10 or 12. All of these teams need a wide receiver and a cornerback. If you can get one in this draft as combined, there's no reason not to at least try him out. Now, the question is, in the NFL, say the Browns draft him and they say, Travis Hunter, you can play both ways. But after 2 weeks, it's not working, right? He doesn't have his energy on his wide receiver routes, or he's not being able to be as effective of a corner because he's spending all of his energy on offense as a wide receiver, or vice versa. Or for whatever reason, he's just not as effective as a wide receiver or a corner because he's playing both sides. Now, Steve Smith, Sr., probably a future Hall of Famer, says that he needs to focus on one to be truly elite. He was at his pro day at Colorado where he instead just ran routes. He didn't do anything else but run routes. It was to show his quick twitch abilities, not routes he's really going to be running in games. But Steve Smith said his footwork needed to have a little bit of work. He said he needed to focus on one side of the ball to truly be elite, and that's where the big question comes in. Can Travis Hunter truly be elite at both positions at the same time? Now, we've seen it work before. Obviously, Deion Sanders did it both, not full-time. We haven't seen anybody truly do it full-time. We've seen Pro Bowl caliber guys switch from one position to the other, offense to defense, while in the NFL, but we've never seen them play full-time on both sides. So this is going to be a new journey undertaken by whatever team is going to take Travis Hunter. Again, I suspect it's going to be the Browns. But it's good that he's putting this out there, because saying you will quit football is a strong message. It's a strong call, and teams are either going to accept it or have to call the bluff. And I don't think he's bluffing. Like I've said, his path through college was basically just because he wanted to take this path, play both sides at college. In the NFL, he's proved he could do it in college. There's no reason to believe that he can't do it. But I am a little scared that some of these owners are going to see this and be scared of it. But again, if you were scared of this, if you didn't want him to play both sides of the ball, you should never have drafted him in the top 3 anyway. You should have never drafted him in the first round. Or that's not true. You shouldn't have drafted him in the top 3 if he wasn't worth playing both ways. He's just a very special player, and it would be a detriment to your team if you're going to sit there and you're going to say, no, Travis Hunter, you have to pick one. I don't think he's bluffing. I don't think this is going to scare away too many teams, but this is something that I think is going to be really interesting as we get closer to the draft, after the draft really more than anything, of how teams are going to handle Travis Hunter, what it's going to look like. That's going to be a massive story, and I cannot wait to see how it goes. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? How is it going to go? Do you think it's going to scare off any teams? Is it going to push him further down the draft board than we expect? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention back to the draft board, specifically to the quarterbacks. We'll go over the top 5 NFL quarterbacks in this year's draft. A couple honorable mentions as well, as it gets a little bit messy once you get past QB4. But we'll talk about that next, coming up here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, April 15th, if you are just tuning in. We just finished going over the news of Travis Hunter, what he had to say about playing both ways in the NFL. In this segment, we turn our attention to the quarterback class. There are a lot of quarterbacks that are kind of in a big jumble. After Cam Ward, who's next? Who's the QB2? Who's the QB3? Who's the QB5 in this class? We'll sort all that out here. Go QB, top 5 QBs with a couple honorable mentions. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you would like to be an even bigger part of if you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, April 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get a little bit here into what's going on with the top 5 quarterbacks in the 2025 NFL Draft. Now, we're going to start at the bottom here because that's where it gets really interesting. So my QB5, before we get there, we're going to start with a couple of honorable mentions. And I think there's a real tier here. You can talk about your guys like Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. I think he's had a lot of injury issues. He's older than Trevor Lawrence right now. He's been in college forever. That's a little bit of a red flag. He's similarly in that QB5 range. Same with Will Howard, national champion at Ohio State. Will Howard didn't have a great day when he went and threw at the combine. Will Howard's someone that I think lost a lot of draft stock there, but he could be a mid-round kind of guy. Same thing with Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, who I really do like, but he's again kind of struggled at Ohio State against top competition. Now, there are games where he's been really good. He looked really good at Syracuse all season, set an ACC record for most passing yards in a season. It's pretty impressive. Kyle McCord is a guy that could shoot up draft boards, but he's still in that honorable mention for me till we get to our real QB5. Quinn Ewers out of Texas. Now, Quinn Ewers is an interesting name. Quinn Ewers is someone that obviously played ahead of Arch Manning, led Texas to a very successful season, led them all the way to the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs, led him to the semifinals of last year's college football playoffs. He's been very successful since joining that Texas squad. He is just a really interesting kind of prospect because Quinn Ewers isn't someone that's really going to raise your ceiling, which is kind of what you're looking for. There's plenty of floor-raising backups out there, but when you're looking at getting a guy that can be the face of your franchise, Quinn Ewers doesn't really stand out as that. But he's a safe pick, a guy that you get him in the right offense behind a good offensive line, somewhere like the Rams, somewhere with a good system, the Vikings, with good weapons. He could absolutely show out and be an excellent quarterback. He does need to sit. He's a little bit raw, but that's the same thing that you can say about just about every single quarterback in this class so far. So Quinn Ewers is my QB5, but it's not by a very large margin. After that, there's a bit of a gap between QB5 and QB4, but QB4 for me pretty comfortably is Jackson Dart. Now, we talked a little bit about Jackson Dart in our first segment. I think Jackson Dart is a very solid quarterback. I love what he's able to do with his arm. He's got great arm talent. He's able to fit it in. He's not scared of making those tight window throws, but he doesn't make the greatest decisions all the time. He doesn't have the greatest field vision, and he's someone that I just don't think is necessarily going to translate to the NFL. When I watch him, I see shades, maybe it's just because he's wearing that Ole Miss uniform, of another quarterback that I really liked in Matt Corral. Big arm, can make all the throws, but now we see Matt Corral in the UFL, right? He's not even a backup in the NFL. I've seen people comp him to Zach Wilson. I think that's a little bit unfair. I think he's a little bit different than Zach Wilson, but Jackson Dart's still in that same kind of area, that gray area. Yes, he had a really good showing at the Senior Bowl, but Jackson Dart, again, just not someone that I'm super impressed with, a lot like everybody else in this draft class. My QB3, and this one might have people coming for my heads on this one, but I think my QB3 is Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, a supremely talented quarterback. His accuracy is among the best we've seen, kind of similar to Tua in the fact that he doesn't have the strongest arm, and he isn't necessarily the greatest athlete, but like we've seen Tua be, this is a type of quarterback that can be very successful in the NFL. Shedeur Sanders, I think, is someone that, with his ability to read the field, not make mistakes, can be successful, but he needs to be in the right offense. He needs to have a good offensive line that can protect him a little bit. He needs to have good weapons that can beat guys on routes so that he can fit it into those good windows that he's been able to do with Travis Hunter at Colorado, right? Shedeur Sanders, I think, is a very, very talented quarterback, but he just doesn't have the upside that I think some of these other quarterbacks in this class does. Shedeur Sanders, I think, could be elite, and I think that's the bar, right? QB3, 2, and 1 in my mind all can be elite quarterbacks in the NFL. Quarterback 4 and lower for me, I just don't really see them with that elite ability in the NFL, but Shedeur Sanders sure does have that ability to do it. He's just someone that I think needs to rest, and where he's going to go, I just don't think he's going to find the right spot. Now, if he lands in a spot like Minnesota, when they drafted J.J. McCarthy, he lands in a spot where he's able to sit behind someone, have a good offensive line. Maybe that's going to be a really, really good spot for him to be. But Shedeur Sanders is going to be a starting quarterback next season for someone, and I just think he's going to be thrown into the fire too quickly behind a bad offensive line, and I just don't think it's going to work out. My QB2, again, don't throw rocks at me, but Jalen Milroe is my QB2. Jalen Milroe, and I've fallen into this trap before, right? I fell into this trap with Anthony Richardson. I was so high on Anthony Richardson when he was his cycle to come through the draft. I still like Anthony Richardson's upside. I think he can still turn it around. Jalen Milroe is that same kind of archetype. The big arm, athletic, big athlete guy. A guy that's going to be able to run through you. A guy that's going to be able to make every single throw on the field with every single kind of arm angle there is. He's very similar, again, to a guy like Anthony Richardson, a guy like Colin Kaepernick, those kind of guys that were big, strong, physical runners, had elite arms that could make any throw on the field. Jalen Milroe is that kind of guy. Now, the question is, will he develop? Because we have seen all different stages of this. Again, we'll go floor, middle, ceiling with Jalen Milroe. Floor, Anthony Richardson, a guy that just does not work out. There's plenty of examples of really toolsy guys that don't work out in the NFL. Plenty of them. He can join yet another pile of teams that were just blown away by his potential, and potential gets you fired. The middle, again, kind of like a Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick led his team to a Super Bowl. He was really good for a really short peak, but he was elite in the NFL. Obviously, his career ended a little differently than I expect any of these quarterbacks to go. But Jalen Milroe, I think with his kind of ability to play football, I think it's very similar to what we saw with Colin Kaepernick. And then at the top, you've got an MVP level guy with a guy like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, who just won an MVP, right? We're talking big physical players, quarterbacks that have super strong arms, can run you over all at the same time. That's what we're looking at with Jalen Milroe. I love his upside, and that's just the kind of thing that we're taking. He's my QB2 in this draft. I don't expect him to go QB2, and he's going to be one of those guys that's very iffy. Again, very toolsy guy. I've fallen into this trap before, and I will fall into it again every single time. You show me a big, physical, mobile quarterback, I will say, yes, please get him on my team. But Jalen Milroe, I truly believe, is a QB2 in this class. But then there's a big gap, a huge gap to QB1 where you have Cam Ward. And one of the things that stands out the most about Cam Ward, we've talked on and on about him, is his pocket presence, right? He really jumped off the page to people at Miami, but he did a very similar thing when he was at Oregon State and before that when he transferred before. But Cam Ward, I love. Cam Ward is someone that I think can be a franchise quarterback. I think he's got the highest floor of everybody. I also think he's got close to the highest ceiling. I won't say he's got the highest ceiling. I think Jalen Milroe and maybe even Shedeur Sanders potentially have higher ceilings, but Cam Ward's floor is the highest out of all of them. He's the one that I feel the most comfortable with being a successful quarterback in the NFL, and Cam Ward is my QB1. He'll go number 1 overall, as he should, but really it's that pocket presence, his ability to stay calm behind an offensive line, be able to sit in the face of pressure, be able to play hero ball. I know people say that's a negative, and it is sometimes. You have to be able to play in structure, but also having the ability to go hero ball when you need to is a huge positive, and he has that. There's not a lot of guys in the NFL, or there's not a lot of guys in college, I should say, that have that ability to just lock in when they need to, but Cam Ward absolutely does. He's my QB1. I'll run through my list again real quick. QB1 is Cam Ward. QB2 is Jalen Milroe. QB3 is Shedeur Sanders. QB4, Jackson Dart. And QB5 is Quinn Ewers. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who are your top 5 quarterbacks in this draft? Where do you have each of them going? How many quarterbacks do you have in the first round? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention down to Miami. Jalen Ramsey, most likely going to be traded. What else is going to change in Miami with the Dolphins? We'll talk about that coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, April 15th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over all of the top 5 quarterbacks in this class, my top 5 QBs. In this segment, we turn our attention over to Miami. The Miami Dolphins have just made a major announcement surrounding star cornerback Jalen Ramsey. He is officially on the trade block as they have mutually agreed to seek a trade partner for the very, very talented cornerback. We'll see where he might end up. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, April 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get a little bit here into what's going on with Miami and Jalen Ramsey. Of course, the Miami Dolphins have had a really interesting offseason. It all kind of started when Tyreek Hill asked for a trade at the beginning of the offseason, right after the season ended. He's since redacted that statement, or retracted, I should say, that statement a little bit. Things can still change, but let's focus on Jalen Ramsey. The Dolphins and star cornerback Jalen Ramsey have mutually agreed to seek a trade partner for him. Jalen Ramsey got a massive contract extension last season that keeps him under contract through 2028. It was a $72 million extension for him. And he kind of regressed last season. It was the first season that we've seen him regress. Of course, he went from the Jags to the Rams to the Dolphins, but he had just 2 interceptions last season. And there are plenty of teams that need a star corner. Let's just look at some of the potential playoff teams from last year that were close, teams from last year that got in, made big runs that need corners. Where might he go? I've got a list of 5 teams that I think he might end up in. We're going to start at number 5, the Detroit Lions. Now, Jalen Ramsey from Florida. And the reason I have the Lions at 5 is not because of anything that they do wrong. It's just because this is a cold weather team. It's a mutual agreed upon trade destination. And I don't get the sense that Jalen Ramsey really wants to go to a team like the Lions all the way up north. Now, the Lions maybe are a big enough draw with all the success that they've been having, but they did just lose both of their coordinators, which I'm really curious how that's going to affect them. It can't really be positive, I don't assume. Ben Johnson, of course, a really great offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn, a really good defensive coordinator. That's going to hurt a lot. They went out and they brought in DJ Reed, so the need for a corner is a little bit lessened as well, so I don't know how much they're going to give up. I can't imagine the Dolphins are going to be getting a first-round pick out of this. Jalen Ramsey, a little bit older, kind of past his prime. He only had, again, 2 interceptions last season, an 83 passer rating when they were targeting him. It's just a little bit worse than what he used to. He's getting older. He just hasn't been the best. Another team that I think could move a lot for him, a couple teams that I think can move a lot for him, are the Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cincinnati Bengals case is pretty obvious, right? This is a Bengals team that sucked defensively. Cam Taylor-Britt was their best defender, at least in the cornerback room, and he got cooked all the time. Getting a guy like Jalen Ramsey in the room is instantly going to make that defense better, show Joe Burrow and the rest of the people of Cincinnati that they're trying to win, and it's probably only going to cost second, third round pick for him. Jalen Ramsey, you are going to have to take on that contract, which is going to be a little bit tough for the Bengals, but if they're able to finagle that a little bit, I think they'll be able to work around the cap a little bit, make sure that Jalen Ramsey's contract fits with the books, and I really think the Bengals are a team that should go pretty all in for him. The Cowboys are another one. Jerry Jones loves making these flashy moves, right? They, ahead of the draft, have been rumored to be interested in some corners, right? Trayvon Diggs has been dealing with injuries and is a little bit of not the same guy that he was before, right? You have, on the other side, more guys dealing with injuries that probably not the same. The defense was cooked last year. Everything that could have gone wrong with them kind of did go wrong with them. Getting a guy like Jalen Ramsey, adds star power, which the star on the side of the helmet. The Cowboys always kind of looking to get, America's team, as it would seem. And this is a Cowboys team that's made a lot of swings, right? They went out and they traded for guys like traded for a guy like Joe Milton. They traded for a guy like Trey Lance on the offensive side of the ball to serve as backups. These high toolsy guys. Why not add more star power? You're going to need to again, this is a team that needs to pay its players. This is a team that needs to pay Micah Parsons. But outside of that, bringing in a guy like Jalen Ramsey, I think, is something that would go a long ways to making this defense better. The 49ers are another interesting team. The 49ers, I think, are going to take a step back this season, really especially because of that cornerback room, right? They lose Charvarius Ward to free agency. He was their CB1. They don't really have a great secondary. Tylisa Funga also gone in free agency. Dre Greenlaw, the defense really got picked apart. Deebo Samuel is out of there in a trade. This is a 49ers team that is kind of a shell of its former self right now. Getting a guy like Jalen Ramsey in the building, go back to California, play in the same division he was in before, go to the NFC. Again, something that I think the Dolphins would be more interested in sending him to, the other conference, so they wouldn't have to play him that much. That's one that I think could be really interesting. They're near the top of the list. And one that I don't really think will happen, but I think they should be calling anyway, the Washington Commanders. We've seen Adam Peters be really aggressive on the trade market. Of course, he went out and he got Marshawn Lattimore last trade deadline, but he hasn't really been enough, right? That pass defense was still really bad. They've shored up the run defense through free agency, but they haven't really addressed the corner. Maybe they get one in the draft at pick 28, or maybe they trade for Jalen Ramsey. Trading a late second-round pick for Jalen Ramsey, pairing him up, a cornerback duo dealing with Jalen Ramsey and Marshawn Lattimore is not going to be easy for any team, even if those guys aren't at their peak of their powers right now. Getting him to Washington, I think, would be a really interesting move. So places that I think he should or could end up, we're talking the 49ers, the Bengals, the Cowboys, and the Washington Commanders as all very interesting spots. The Lions also in there. The Packers trying to move off of a guy like Jair Alexander. If they're able to do that, maybe they go and replace him with Jalen Ramsey. Maybe that's a big possibility. But the big question going through my mind right now is, what does this mean for the Dolphins season, right? This is a Dolphins team that has really not paid any of their homegrown talent. They went out and they gave up a lot for Tyreek Hill. They paid Tua, but they let Christian Wilkins walk. They let Robert Hunt walk. This is a team that really struggled last season and really disappointed last season. Tua needs to be able to stay healthy. The defense needs to be able to stay healthy. Let Javon Holland walk in free agency, which is a big mistake, I think. He was a huge part of when they were successful on defense. But the Dolphins, are they going to move off of Tyreek Hill? He's been posting a lot on social media, talking about, joking, according to him, about asking for a trade. He asked for a trade at the end of last season. The GM today said that they're not looking to trade him. But I think there's a real kind of where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing with Tyreek Hill, and maybe the Dolphins want to get back into that first round after picking at 13. Moving off of Tyreek Hill, you still have Jalen Waddle. Maybe you can make a trade there, send him somewhere that desperately needs a wide receiver. You can get a first-round pick, I still think, for Tyreek Hill. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the Dolphins are going to do? Where do you think Jalen Ramsey is going to go? Do you think the Dolphins are going to be able to bounce back this season? I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the world of hockey. There are just 1 or 2 games left for each and every single team in the NHL. We'll talk about where the playoff races are heading right now, which spots are clinched, which spots are up for grabs, and much more. Coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over everything going on in Miami right now. Miami, of course, a very interesting football team this year. Now they're moving off of Jalen Ramsey. Interesting how that's going to go. But in this segment, we turn our attention to the NHL. We talked about the playoffs for the NBA. The NHL season ends on Thursday. 1 or 2 games left for each and every team. We'll talk about which playoff spots are up for grabs, what the bracket's looking like right now, and what storylines are happening as we reach the final stretches of this year. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, April 15th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit here on the NHL playoff races. We're going to start, as we always do, with an update on what's going on with the President's Trophy race. That has officially been clinched. The Winnipeg Jets have clinched their first ever President's Trophy win. That just goes to the team with the best record in the NHL. They're going to finish with around 115 points. That is incredibly impressive for a team. You're going to get a Vezina winning season once again from Connor Hellebuck, who's been just lights out all season. But the playoffs are basically set. There's a couple spots in each conference yet to be decided and some seeding that still needs to be figured out. So we'll start off with that seeding start. And starting with the East, which is a little bit more interesting than the West, in my opinion, you have 2 spots really up for grabs. One spot is just seeding, one spot is truly for the playoffs. We'll start off with the seeding. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning both are fighting for the number 2 overall seed in the East. For the top of their division, those 2 teams are separated by 4 points. Right now, the Maple Leafs have a 4-point lead on the Leafs. The Maple Leafs have a 4-point lead on the Lightning, I should say. They're both in action, but the Maple Leafs just need 1 point to clinch their division. The Maple Leafs at the end of the second period are up 1-0 on the Buffalo Sabres, a game that they probably should win. The Lightning, on the other hand, are up 4-1 on the Florida Panthers, who they themselves have found themselves, they themselves will play the loser of whichever team finishes second. Most likely the Lightning. A preview of a playoff matchup today, and a really good playoff matchup. There's about 13 minutes to go in the second period there. In that one, the Lightning are absolutely dominating. But if everything holds right now, the Maple Leafs will clinch. They just need 1 point, so they just need to go to overtime in order to clinch. And right now, they are on pace to win the game. We will see. There's still a whole period left to play, but that one's basically set. The Toronto Maple Leafs should get that number 2 seed. They're going to be facing off against the Ottawa Senators in the first round, which means we're going to see Tampa Bay play Florida. That one should be really good. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to play the New Jersey Devils. That one's set, but the really interesting one in the East is for the number 2 wildcard spot. The Washington Capitals have clinched the number 1 seed in the East. They're going to be playing whoever is the second wild card, either the Blue Jackets or the Canadiens. And this one has a little bit more oomph to it than a lot of other playoff races. Of course, there was a tragic accident with Johnny Gaudreau and his brother. Johnny Gaudreau, Johnny Hockey, was a player on the Blue Jackets, and this season really has been dedicated to him. Right now, they are on what you might call a Cinderella run. They have been basically out of the playoffs with the way that the Canadiens are playing right now, but they can still find their way in. It's a very similar situation to what's going on between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they're up 4 points right now, but the Canadiens only have 1 game. The Canadiens only have 1 game left, right? They can, if they get 1 more point, they play on Wednesday versus the Hurricanes. Not an easy matchup, although the Hurricanes might be resting players, which is a little tough for the Blue Jackets. The Canadians just need to go to overtime in order to clinch a spot in the playoffs. The Blue Jackets need to win both games. It can go to overtime, but they need to win both games. They're playing the Flyers right now. Currently, they are up 2-0 at the end of the second period. This is something that is huge. Obviously, we'd love to see the Blue Jackets in. The emotions that they're playing with right now obviously means a lot. So that's what we're rooting for over there. The Blue Jackets to find a way in. They have the tiebreaker because they have more regulation wins as long as they win both of these games in regulation. That one is the very important part. They need to win both games in regulation in order to find a way into the playoffs, or I should say at least one of them in regulation. Then we'd go to a second tiebreaker where I believe they'll have it as long as they win both games. But that is a very interesting race to watch. In the Western Conference, everything is set other than the wild cards. Right now, it's a 3-man race for the wild cards in the Western Conference, a race between the Wild, who are at 95 points with 1 game left, the Blues, who are at 94 points with 1 game left, and the Flames, who are at 92 points with 2 games left. Now, the Wild are playing the Ducks tonight. All 3 of these teams are in action right now. The Wild currently playing the Anaheim Ducks. Not really a great team, but at the end of one period, they're tied at 1. The Blues are playing the Utah Hockey Club. Also not really a great team. They're up 3-0 nearing the end of the first period. And the Flames from Calgary also are playing Vegas tonight. That's a really good team. They haven't kicked off yet. Right now, the Wild can clinch a spot in the playoffs with a win. Right now, they're up 3 points. The Flames can get at most 4. If they win a game, they can clinch a spot in the playoffs. Really, at worst, all they need to do is win they need to win a game, but they could also just get to overtime. So as long as they get to overtime versus the Ducks tonight, they will be able to be in the playoffs. Now, a battle between the number 1 wild card and the 2 wild card is going to be a little more interesting. The Blues, if they win the game tonight, would jump the Wild. If the Wild lose in overtime, as they would be tied they would have the same record. So that would go to head-to-head, which I believe would go to the Wild there. But the Wild, if they win this game, clinch that number 1 seed for 100%. If they go to overtime, it's going to be a little more complicated. Now, the Flames, they're in a little bit more of an interesting spot. They need to win out again. They need to beat Vegas. They need to beat the Kings. They need to do both of those in regulation in order to find a way in. It's a little bit tougher for them. They've got probably the toughest schedule left out of all these teams trying to find a way into the playoffs. I expect it to be the Wild and the Blues getting in, as well as the Montreal Canadiens. As much as I hate to say it, I think the Hurricanes aren't going to be really trying too hard on Wednesday, but we'll see. If the Canadiens lose on Wednesday back in the Eastern Conference, that game versus the Islanders is going to be must-see TV to see who gets in. That's going to be a big one to watch. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who do you think gets in the NHL? Who do you think wins the Stanley Cup? We'll do a bigger breakdown when all of this becomes official on Thursday. But I'd love to hear what you think. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow going over everything from around the world of sports. It is Wednesday, which means NBA Power Rankings, special NBA playoff Power Rankings for you. That's all coming up then. I'll see you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.